Hello, everybody. Welcome to Clash of the Correspondents. My name's James, and in this first of 4 C.O.T.C podcasts during the international break, I'm joined by two of our correspondents looking forward to a game in game week 30. Let me first introduce you to Adam Hopcroft, a Hopcroft13 on Twitter, our Aston Villa correspondent. How are you, Adam?
Yeah, really good, thanks. It was nice and well timed after yesterday's match for me to be on.
Makes a change that this has gone well for me. We'll get on to that. And let me also introduce you to Dara Curran at the Tinkermen, our Fulham correspondent. How are you, Dara?
Not too bad, James. Thanks.
Good man. Well, let's talk about that first, Adam. Or actually, let's jump the game last night first.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Dean Smith, who we spoke about very briefly prior to starting recording, and the fact he's just trying to wind up FPL managers every week with Jack Grealish. Did he know all along that Grealish was going to be out for sort of 4 or 5 weeks, as was originally revealed?
Yeah. I don't think this is a new thing with Dean Smith, because if we go back to the Championship when Grealish had a shin injury, I think similar injury to what he's got now, and it was just before when Grealish came back, we had the run where we won 10 games in a row. But the team news, it was just like this every single time. There was no definitive he's going to be out for a month, or there was, and every update, it was just he's getting closer. You could see him working in the gym. At the moment, I'd seen JT had posted something on Instagram about
JT. I was just sick in the back of my mouth, mate.
Well, he's one of ours now, isn't he? So, but he posted something about him being back, and yeah, it is frustrating. I think, but Dean Smith isn't that clear. He's never that clear on injury news, and I think it's because we haven't had loads of injuries that probably FPL managers haven't seen it that often. I think that's a coincidence with the Jack Grealish thing and him winding up FPL managers. He is usually quite evasive with team news, and particularly with injuries. So yeah, I hope Jack's back. I mean, he said 99.9% he'll be back for the Fulham game. So
you're not certain of that, are you?
I'm not certain. No. I think, given he's got a 2-week international break, and that he's been training out, he's been doing some work individually, you would expect him to be back. And he was at the game last night. He looks in fairly good spirit. So I think he'll be back. But
nice clothes.
Who knows? Oh God, what? It was appalling attire, wasn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. It was terrible. But I'm hoping he's back, because watching Villa without Grealish, I've limited the number of matches I'm watching, and from a football perspective, watching Villa at the moment is quite hard. We're not creating anything, and it goes to show. I think you go with certain teams. You take Zaha out of Palace, you take Bruno out of United, and it has a bad effect on them. But Villa, there's just no creativity whatsoever. I put a bet on last night for the game to be 0-0. That's, and because I thought we got a decent chance of keeping a clean sheet, particularly when I saw the Spurs lineup. And it was just 2 mistakes really that cost us. It was two, I think the penalty was a definite penalty, but it was very, whether Kane won it or not, there's no question. Cash didn't need to make the challenge. And then obviously the first goal was a mistake, but to be fair, Spurs, punished us. But there wasn't much. I mean, the game, there wasn't loads of chances, was there really, either way. And we got punished for a few mistakes, but we just didn't create anything. It was really, really poor from an attacking point of view.
I said this time last week, I said, Grealish plays, Villa win. Grealish doesn't play, Tottenham probably win. I've described you on a few of the recent podcasts as saying average. Just literally average without Grealish. And I don't think that should be a slight on you, because I think probably pre-season you'd have probably taken average this season compared to last season. But is it as simple as that? Just average without Grealish?
Yeah, I think we're below average without Grealish, because if you look at the results that we've had without him, we've lost to Sheffield United. That probably says it all, doesn't it? How bad we are. But it's not. I don't think, if you look at the 1 to 11 outside of Grealish, we've got some really good players in there, but it's because he's so key to creativity. We just don't create. I mean, the number of chances he's gone to a different level this year, but the number of chances we create, that he creates, is just unbelievable. So you take that out of the team. And the problem we've got is that the areas that I feel that we're weak and we haven't got the quality is the wide players, or if you look at Trezeguet, El Ghazi, I think Traore is so frustrating, and he hasn't really, it was a great ball for a target last night, and he has that in him, but we just don't have that quality in those wide or an attacking midfield areas. So which is frustrating, because I think that's probably the area that we need to target in the summer. Defensively, we're fine, and we made a couple of mistakes last night, but I think we've got a really good unit defensively. The back four and the two in front, but Watkins needs more from a creativity point of view. It's almost the three players that play behind Watkins. That's where we need to strengthen, and hopefully Sanson will get better. I think Barkley's good with Grealish, but obviously they're sort of overlapped when they haven't played much together recently. So yeah, I think Grealish has such a big influence on Villa, and I think it's also the fact when the players see Grealish in the team, it raises their game as well.
2 goals scored in those 6 without him. I definitely want to come back onto some of those creative issues. Let's bring Dara into the conversation. Do you have creative issues as well? Is that a big problem for Fulham at the moment?
Yeah, big time. I was just looking at some of the stats. I kind of knew a few beforehand going into it, but we're basically the worst for goal conversion in the league. We're like, if you look at goal attempts, goals and shots in the box, XG, we're kind of like mid-table. We're just not putting them away. It's just not falling for us. So I'm not sure. Like, Parker rolled the dice at the weekend. He took off Maja and put on Mitrovic, and it just didn't work at all. I think it was a bad move on his part, but I don't know. I'd be interested to see. Kearney could be back after the international break. Maybe that's just that link between the midfield and attack that might just be that creative spark. I'd be also interested maybe to see Mitro and Maja playing off each other, see if that does anything, because he's almost turned into an assister when he has played this season, Mitrovic. He's kind of holding up play and linking it and bringing people into the game. He did really well against City recently when he came on for the last 30 minutes or so. And earlier on the season, he picked up a few assists. Like, after Lookman, who's created 8 big chances, it's Mitrovic on 4. So that tells you everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Decordova-Reid, Lookman and Cavallero got 12 goals between them, which it's 5, 4 and 3 respectively. I think Decordova-Reid's actually got the most with 5. Then your next highest scorer is 2, which includes Mitrovic's 2 goals at Leeds in game week 2. And I think Friday night there was a little bit of, we caused some problems in the reverse fixture. Let's do the same again. I've said, Dara, that I think he's obviously probably the best goal scorer in the squad. But my opinion is you don't play as well as soon as he's on the pitch. Is that a fair comment?
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. I really want him to do well. And there's times in games where he's come on the last couple of minutes and he sort of has done bits and pieces. But the thing is, we're just not going to get as much possession as we did do in the Championship. So... And teams are going to push us back. So we just can't play. He doesn't have the pace. He doesn't have the movement to get in behind defenses. And he just doesn't really suit the style of play that Parker wants to play. Simple as that. I think there's probably a time for him against some of the teams that will sit back and just put 2 banks of 4 against us, that whip balls into the box in that instance might work. But for the most part, I don't really see how it works.
No, it's interesting because you still had 51% possession against Leeds on Friday night, and not many teams do that. Actually, I think if we go back to the Leicester win at the King Power, that kind of felt like the changing moment where Mitrovic came out the team, and you were going to go with these pacey wide players who could come in and kind of alternate in terms of the position that they play. Ironically, though, when you need to score goals and win games, what's made you really good also feels like it's become a little bit of the downfall, because, I mean, some of Lookman's stats if you look at individual games, you group certain games, you think he could be such an explosive FPL player. The reality is he's been in my team for weeks on end. I've left him on the bench most weeks and it's barely hurt me. It's barely come back to haunt me at all, unfortunately.
Well, I think teams have recognised that he's the danger man and kind of marked him out of a lot of games. And then there's nobody else really. Like Cavallero, he just doesn't have end product. Loftus-Cheek, for all like the good work that he does, doesn't have any kind of goal scoring capabilities whatsoever. And then Deckard Overeed, well, he was playing wing back at one stage, so you can't have your top goal scorer playing wing back.
That Leicester game was game week 10. Just having a look through now, I think you've lost 6 games since, which includes obviously the last 2. You shouldn't be where you are in the league, should you?
I don't think so. I think we're playing like a mid-table team, but we just can't finish. I think, I mean, obviously we lost to City 3-0, but if you look at all the other games, there's hardly been too many that have been by more than 2 goals. There was Leicester, who, like, Maddison just absolutely ran the show against us and we lost by 2 goals. I think before that, you have to go back to, like, the Villa game, I think, was the last time that we lost by more than 2. We lost by 3. And then Arsenal at the start of the season. Every other game's been, like, a goal in it. We got a man sent off against Chelsea. They won by 1-0 in the end. Pogba scored a wonder goal against us to win the game. We've been in a lot of games, just too many draws and not enough goals.
You obviously had them this time last year in a very similar position to what Fulham are in now, kind of coming back off the restart. I think if the season got annulled, you would have gone down, wouldn't you? I think on points per game at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No one's wishing that would have happened. I think West Ham would have gone with you, unfortunately. But you really turned it round because of the defensive stats that you've already alluded to on this podcast, that defensively you feel like you're right. But then I think we all look at Fulham at the moment and go, well, they're all right defensively as well, generally speaking. The stats Dara's given out kind of allude to that. What do you feel like was the change for you in the running? What happened to Villa that then made them whipping boys, basically, to a really difficult team to beat? I think during the restart period, I want to say you were 3rd or 4th best for goals conceded.
Yeah, I think I was so frustrated, and I said to you a number of times last year that when we were whipping boys, I just couldn't understand it, because for me there was a simple fix in terms of how we played. We had the personnel, and our personnel didn't really change as we went later in the season. And with John Terry involved in the defensive, you would have expected that to have happened earlier for Villa. But quite simply, I think there was, I think Pepe Reina coming in helped for a start, because we had a goalkeeper that we could trust. He's obviously not as good as Martinez is at the moment, but I think having a goalkeeper we could trust, particularly for the last 6 or 7 games of the season, was really important. I think then we just played as a unit, particularly the back 4, and then with McGinn and Douglas Luiz, and it was very much about keeping it tight, staying in games, like Fulham are doing now. And I think the big difference, though, and this is where it will be a big disadvantage to Fulham, is that the league was very different last season. If you look at it, there were like 5 or 6 teams. I think the points total to stay up, I'm just looking I think will be a bit higher this season. A lot higher this season, because, and actually the points total to win the league will be, the points are a bit more distributed across the league this year, whereas last season they weren't. And that meant that, 4 games, I think with 4 games left, we were 6 or 7 points behind. But because we weren't completely out of it, we were able to put it back. I think we stayed up with 35 points. That's not going to happen this season. So I think it was partly because of the quality of the league that, come lockdown, we still had that outside chance, because nobody had pulled away. And whereas I think the hard thing for Fulham is that I think the problem Fulham have is they don't win enough games. I mean, I've just brought up the table from the start of December, when they've started to get good. So they've only lost, like you said, they lost 7 games from that point, but they've drew 10, and they've won 3. So the drawing is what's costing them at the moment. They're not their goals against and their XG is really, it's decent. It's in the higher part of the table, but the lack of goals and you look at Leeds, for example. Leeds are quite interesting because they've won 8, lost 10, and drew 1. It's that lack of draws I think when you play Fulham, I think they've given, other than maybe Man City, they've given everybody a really good game. But what I think, and we had this last year, we struggled for goals. We were heavily reliant on Grealish for everything. We had striker issues. But I think when you look at Fulham, you don't really see where the goals are coming from. And I think even Lookman's very wasteful. I wouldn't bring him into my team. I mean, I looked at it prior to this weekend. 1 goal in 11. That's, and he's I think he's below his XG there. So I just think the problem with Fulham is just scoring and creating chances, and they need to defensively. I think they've done okay. There've been a few blips recently, but Anderson looks decent. I think the back, whether they've played with a back 4 or back 5, in general for the last 15 to 20 games, they've been decent, but that it's the goals that are going to cost them, or the lack of goals, unfortunately.
Anything you specifically want to add to Adam's comments there, Dara?
Not really. I agree. I agree with everything he said. I think we've been a bit unlucky in some of the games that we've played, and obviously we had the penalty issues at the start of the season.
Yeah, of course.
which could have swayed a couple of points here or there. We missed one against Sheffield United that ended up a draw. That still could have probably ended up a draw. Missed a last minute penalty to West Ham. That could have been a draw, and their goal, there was an offside in it. We had give away a penalty to Liverpool, which was, by the letter of the law, it was a penalty, but harsh.
Cavallero missed against Everton.
We'd a man sent off against Newcastle, which was then overturned the following week. We had the goal against Spurs, which was disallowed. There's been things that have gone against us this season, and just little things here or there. We could have had more points on the board, and we could have been a lot more comfortable.
VAR, just saying, VAR obviously will prove that you get the correct results at the end, like with Nyland against Sheffield United last year, which helped keep Villa up. And it's fair what you said about Anderson's red card at Newcastle, a game that you were playing extremely well in at the time. And this was kind of before your run of results. And it's obviously you two head to head at the bottom, and it could be that matters at the end. Do you, just bluntly to you, Dara, do you think you'll stay up?
Yeah, I do.
Is that because of you, or is it because of Newcastle?
I think it's because of Newcastle. If we can't catch this Newcastle side, what's the point? What are we even doing here? A Newcastle without Callum Wilson, without Maxim, without who's injured at the weekend.
They're all coming back, aren't they? They could be back in game week 30.
Yeah, but they've still got Steve Bruce. They're sticking with Bruce. What their tactics are like. I don't know if you've ever seen that episode of South Park, the Underpants Gnomes one. It's like their plan A is don't take any shots. Plan B, who knows what that is. And then the third step is somehow stay up. That's I don't know what's going on.
You've got them last game of the season, haven't you, Newcastle?
Yeah. Potentially with fans as well, which could be a little...
I think I'm just looking at your fixtures now. I think you've got enough to stay up, because if you forget, we've got to bear in mind the league table does include the first 8 or 9 games of the season where you were really pretty poor or whatever it was. And I think it was one of our easiest games at the start of the season. But then, to be fair to Scott Parker, he's really, really turned it around. And I think if you continue to play and get the points returns that you've been getting, you should eke out enough points. And you're playing a lot of teams. So I'm just looking at this. You've got Villa, Wolves, Arsenal, who are probably more focused on the Europa League. So the next 3 are sort of mid-table-ish teams that haven't really got loads to play for. Burnley, Southampton, Newcastle. I think you've got you're just going to
got to win them though.
You've got to turn the draws into wins.
6 draws won't be enough.
Yeah, I think we need probably 4 wins at least, and maybe a couple of draws as well.
Do you think you see playing away from home more? Because I think the two performances that I enjoyed watching Fulham were the Everton game. I thought you were superb, and the Liverpool game. thought you were absolutely brilliant in both of them. But I suppose there was more onus on the home teams to come out, and they probably saw it as a game that they should win. Whereas I think you used the space really well in those matches.
Yeah, well, I can't quite put my finger on it what it is, but at home we've just been horrific. We've only scored 9 goals at home, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's over 16 games. So that's pretty bad.
I didn't realize it was that bad.
Conceded 23. Our away form, 14 goals scored in 14 games, 15 goals against. So just over a goal a game conceded, 16 points from those. Yeah, it's pretty bad at home.
Anything that you think behind that reason?
No idea. Usually we've been pretty solid at home. It's the away form that's done us, and it's just completely reversed. It's flipped it on its head. So, yeah, I don't know.
All right.
It's a strange one.
Let's change that briefly. I want to speak to you, Adam, as from the perspective of an Ollie Watkins owner.
Yeah.
What should I be doing with Ollie?
So I own Ollie Watkins, and I haven't. I suppose if Grealish is back, and the big if Dean Smith gives his press conference and says he's 100% playing, and we want to trust him, I think you keep him for the Fulham game. It depends on what your situation is wildcard wise. I'm wildcarding in 31, and I'll be very surprised if I keep Watkins. I think I like him as a player, and I think he's been very key to a lot of what Villa have done this season. But more recently, he's just not had the service. And I think there are going to be better options. Our running's pretty tough. We've got City, Liverpool, Chelsea. I think we've got you guys away. Everton.
Don't worry about that. We won't beat you twice, mate.
but I think our fixtures are actually pretty tough in the running. So it could suit us possibly if we on catching teams on the counter. But I'd get rid of Watkins personally. And I think he's been unlucky this year. I mean, he's been one of the most frustrating players to own. I think I think he's been unlucky. Some people might say it's bad finishing, but he's had marginal offside decisions. He's hit the bar or post 7 times.
It's the most in the league, I think.
Most in the league, and I think it'll be one of those that even itself up over time, but probably
not till next season.
Not till next season, yeah. But he's been a brilliant upgrade. I think he's a goal scorer, but at the moment he's just got absolutely no service.
So, if you're wildcarding in 31 and you're saying Watkins probably going to go, and I agree with that. I'm in the same position as yourself.
Yeah.
Are there any other Villa that you are considering / thinking of keeping if you've got Martinez, for example?
No, I don't think I've got Martinez. I don't think I'll keep Martinez though, because I'm looking to Villa's fixtures after Fulham. The first 2, Liverpool, Man City. They then got West Brom, which you'd fancy a clean sheet there. Then they've got Everton and Man United. So I'm just looking at it. There's only really 2 games that I look at and think, definite clean sheet, which would be Crystal Palace away and West Brom at home. All of the others after 31 are pretty tough.
We've got the potential of this double still lingering. I think now with the FA Cup results, I think it's going to go into whatever the last midweek is, whether that's 37 or 35 is to be confirmed. But I think, it's going to go to the end now, which ironically means you'll play them at home, Everton, after you play them away.
Yeah.
That's how it looks like it's going to work, which is probably going to give you a double of Tottenham and Everton right at the end, or Manchester United and Everton instead. Neither of them sound brilliant.
I think for me, having watched Villa recently, I think Grealish will make a difference, but I think we've got tough fixtures. I think there's better options. When you look at maybe Mendy at Chelsea, or I think there will be better options in goal and defensively as well. So I'll probably just stay away from Villa. I don't think they've got the fixtures to hurt you either. So
there's a lot of people have good build up of value in Martinez, though, aren't they? I mean, he's 5.4 now. Would that factor into any of your thinking? Would you just think, well, now's the time you might as well use that money elsewhere?
Exactly that. I think if the fixtures were a little bit kinder, but I'm looking at the majority of them, and I think the there'll be somebody I think that could score more points. I suppose we've got the extra game that does help, but I'd personally I would remove and go for someone that I think that I fancy to get more clean sheets. I think Mendy looks the best option without investigating it in detail.
I take it your opinion would be similar to that for the defensive assets like Target and Konsa as well, then?
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, I wouldn't. The only match that I would start a Villa defender would be confident in starting them would be West Brom and Palace, and I think they're both too expensive to have as bench fodder. There's better options available. So yeah, I mean, I think I've enjoyed owning Villa players this season. It's been good. It's been
good night. See you next season.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? It'll be good because I expect most people will come off Villa players, and I can just enjoy Villa as well without thinking about FPL. Because I think Martinez has been an interesting one this year because I've only just started owning him fairly recently, and it was I think it was just like it was bittersweet when we kept a clean sheet. I was pleased we kept a clean sheet, but his ownership is that ridiculous. It was actually hurting my FPL rank. So to say that, so I thought, well, I just have to get him in. But I don't like owning Villa defenders, and from a supporter point of view, because you want them to keep a clean sheet anyway. It feels like too much emotional investment. So yeah, but I think that has impacted me this year with how well the Villa defence have done.
41.5% owned Martinez, and I realise a lot of that will be dead. I don't actually know what his live ownership is at the moment, but I mean, he's still absolutely massive either way.
He's about 55-60% in the top 10k or something.
Right.
It's pretty high, yeah.
Only 2 forwards have got more points than him in FPL this season, and Bamford has only just overtaken him. Kane's way out. But so Martinez has got more points than Jamie Vardy, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a lot more than Ollie Watkins, for example.
The reason for that is that firstly we allow a lot of shots. We didn't yesterday, but on the whole we allow a lot of shots, particularly for outside the area. So it's great for save points. I think they trust him to make saves. So that's one of the reasons. So he's up there in terms of saves. We pass out from the back quite a bit, and his distribution's quite good. So it helps with his bonus. So when he keeps clean sheets, if you look at the clean sheets he's kept, you can probably count on one hand. I think out of the 15 clean sheets, you can count on one hand the number of times he's got, single digits, or sorry, just the standard 6. He's usually getting 9, 10, 11, 12. So I think he's been good for that. But I think with FPL, it's about predicting the future. And I think the reality is, do I see Villa looking at those fixtures? I think we probably, at most, will get 4 more clean sheets. And is there going to be somebody else? Because a lot of people will stick with Martinez. So I'm looking at, with the rank that I'm at, and I'm not having a good season, I'm looking at the opportunities. Is there somebody that I think could do better? And I think fixture-wise, I wouldn't invest in him as a keeper. That said, if you look at the games that we've got left, if he does keep clean sheets, let's say he keeps clean sheet against City,
there'll be big holes.
There'll be big holes, but yeah. I'm happy to take the risk. I just think there'll be somebody that will outscore him between now and the end of the season. But even if he sort of just gets 2 or 3 clean sheets, how many points is he on at the moment? He could clear. He could be one of the top scoring goalkeepers of all time, couldn't he? So,
yeah, just interesting. I'll just run you through it because I think it is interesting. He's had 4 6-point returns this season. As you said, there's normally a save or bonus points that come with it. There's been 6 double-digit hauls this season, and the opponents are quite interesting. Sheffield United, Wolves, Crystal Palace, Southampton, Brighton, and Leeds.
That's interesting.
They're basically the mid-table and lower. They're all bottom half sides.
So, and based on that, you won't be too worried about ditching him, would you? No. I think we've recently as well. I think we've been lucky to keep the clean sheets that I think we have, particularly against Brighton. Yeah, I mean that was he was out.
Ridiculous game.
He was
It's probably
outstanding in that game.
best goalkeeper performance in any game this season.
He was absolutely, yeah, and he he has been brilliant. I think he's still made the odd mistake. I think he was at fault yesterday. He was at fault against West Ham for a couple of the goals, but on the whole, he's been an incredible signing. And I think he'll finish as the top scoring keeper. But if I was looking between points wise between now and the end of the season, I don't think he'll be top. I think somebody else will beat him, particularly from 31 onwards. I haven't looked at the goalkeepers enough to give you. I think probably Mendy's the one that I would. The way Chelsea are defending at the moment, he's probably got 5 or 6 clean sheets in there.
Shout out for your one, Dara, because I like Ariola's a good goalkeeper, isn't he?
He's, yeah, I like him. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got him. I've got Mendy as well. That's my double at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. Just looking at our fixtures, there's a few in there. If you want to rotate, I'm sure there's probably plenty that do have Areola. I think there's a few fixtures here that there's potential clean sheets in.
I think you could make a case for 5 of those fixtures are quite interesting for potential clean sheet. Actually,
I mean, if let's say the one that I'm looking at actually is the Southampton fixture. If they manage to get past Leicester, the FA Cup semi-final, is it? No, sorry. 12th of May, we're supposed to play Southampton. Isn't it the 15th of May that the final is scheduled?
That fixture should be okay. I think it depends purely on which set of fixtures they shift. So if they shift 37 to the midweek after the weekend and shove 36 to the weekend, if then Southampton made the FA Cup final, yes, you could be looking at a game week 35 double of Burnley and Southampton.
Nice.
But there's a lot of pieces to fit in that jigsaw to get there, mate. Yeah. And it's quite a way away as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the way our defense has evolved from the opening, like whatever it is, 6 to 10 games of the season, I kind of would fancy our chances nearly against anybody to get something from a game. Now, whether that's a clean sheet or not, that might be a bit bold to say that, but there's not too many. Maybe the Chelsea game, I can't see us really getting anything from that. United depends on how far they are in Europa League. But the rest of the games, I think that we're in with a shout. Like, we've drawn a lot of games, we've lost by just the odd goal in the other ones. I don't know, like, who would I go for outside of Areola? Not too many, to be honest. Maybe Maja, but he's getting 0.95 of a big chance a game, so he's almost getting one big chance every single game, which isn't bad for whatever he is, 5 point something million.
Would you go for any of your defenders, in the sense that if you were considering, like, I want a 4th or 5th defender to bench most weeks, if they come on, maybe Anderson or whoever it would be, or Tosin is thinking that they're cheap enough. They're a little bit cheaper than Villa's. They've got some good fixtures. So, and if they, I mean, I know what you're saying about the Chelsea game, but I wouldn't be absolutely surprised if he kept a clean. I mean, Chelsea are hardly free scoring at the moment, particularly under Tuchel. United can't break, struggle when teams go and just sit. So I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if you kept clean sheets in. I could see. I think there's a possibility that if you look at every single game on its merit, there could be a clean sheet in there. I think that it wouldn't. I wouldn't be shocked if it happens, because I think you've proved that you can go away and particularly be quite compact and make it difficult for teams.
Yeah, quite possibly. To answer your question about the defenders, for assurances of starts, it would be between Tosin and Anderson. There's probably not too much in it between the two. Tosin has probably like a slightly higher XG. He went through, there was a patch of games where he was kind of getting on the end of a lot, but nothing materialized from it. And he's better suited to the bonus point system, so he's more likely to get bonus if we do keep a clean sheet. Whereas Anderson, there's that kind of assist potential. You've seen the crossfield balls that he played against Sheffield United to put Lookman through. He did it numerous times against Liverpool. So one or the other for me. Enya has a little bit more rotation risk about him, but I just from the more recent performances of Robinson, I think I'd have Enya in ahead of him, and Tete at right back. But he's just that, like, Enya's just that kind of versatile Swiss Army man style of that he can play centre back, left back, right back. So there is the odd chance that he will be rotated and Parker shuffles the pack to freshen up things and give players a rest. Whereas I think Tosin and Anderson are going to be there, like, unless they pick up an injury or suspension, they're nailed in.
Dara, can you elaborate on that point on Robinson?
I think since he got sent off at Chelsea, since he's come back, he's made a few errors and his crossing hasn't been as good. He's very good at bombing up and down, but his delivery into the box hasn't been great, and he's just uncharacteristically from the early part of the season where he got in over Brian, he's just kind of made a few mistakes or his positioning has been wrong. And I just feel that playing Enya and Tete would be better than playing with Robinson.
So since the West Ham game in game week 23, you basically switched to a back four. I think there's any chance he switches back to that? And why do you think the change came about?
Sorry, say that once more.
Why do you think that the change came about to move from a back five? Because Enya was basically playing right-sided centre-back, wasn't he? And it basically went to a back four. We saw a little bit of rotation with the full-backs. Why do you think he changed to a back four? And do you think that's sticking now?
Yeah, I think that's going to stick. Maybe against who have we got? Chelsea and United possibly could see the back five, but he didn't do it in the recent big games.
Yeah,
I think it's just a case of we needed to be more adventurous and take more chances. And having a back five, we needed to get bodies in and around the box. And we've kind of it hasn't hindered us too much, taking that extra man out of defense and kind of being a bit more adventurous. So the four still seems to be solid enough. I tend to see that sticking.
It's less than a goal a game in the switch though. 6 goals in 7 games. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily improved your output going forward. And you could argue, obviously, look, you conceded 5 in the last 2, admittedly playing 2 of the best attacking teams in the league in City and Leeds, respectively. I just wonder if he might change it back. So I almost feel like it kind of comes back circle towards the Mitrovic and Maja debate. I almost feel like when you've been at your real best, no one's played there. You didn't know if Lookman was going to be picking up the positions or Decordova-Reid, or if Loftus-Cheek was pushing into a false 9. In fact, it almost felt best to me. I know you're not a huge fan of him, but when Cavallero played the position, I felt like the link between the front was best.
Yeah, he does a lot of good running off the ball, Cavallero, and I think another reason that he did better up front was he didn't have to
defend.
He didn't have to defend. Yeah, he didn't have to track back, which he's not very good at doing. Against Leeds, it just wasn't working. I kind of felt they needed to switch Lookman and Cavallero at one point in the game. It was too predictable, and I think that probably ties into your point where it could have been Cavallero, it could have been Reid, it could have been Lookman. There was a lot of movement. I don't know what the answer is. Hopefully Reid's back. I think we missed him in the last couple of games. But I don't know, he's still changing things up. Like against Leeds, he played the three in midfield to try to obviously like dominate
he
Leeds.
Stuck with it from the City game, didn't he? Anguissa as well.
I think he got it wrong against Leeds. It just didn't work. Anguissa further forward, it just wasn't his role. And then when he took off Reid as well, Harrison Reid, I thought he should have taken Anguissa off for Loftus-Cheek, and he took Reid, and we just kind of lost something in the middle.
Yeah, he's spiky Harrison Reid, isn't he? He's been really good.
Yeah.
to be honest, since the turn of the year, I'd say, because I always thought that
Agree.
Anguissa and Lamina would become the two. But I mean, like Harrison Reed's performance at Everton was a joy to watch, mate. He was so busy and
Class.
annoying.
He was doing
so good.
everything, absolutely everything on the pitch.
He was great at Liverpool as well. I want to ask you, Adam, about your area of the pitch there, because I think first half of the season, we was giving a lot of praise to Douglas Luiz and John McGinn. And then obviously Ross Barkley ahead of that. That trio just felt right. I feel like they've all, I mean, Barkley's obvious, but I feel like Douglas Luiz had a real drop-off the last couple of months, actually. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's definitely. I think he's been... he had a couple of matches out where Nakamba came in and did okay, actually. Mate, I think he adds a little bit.
I want to say Arsenal and Leeds, and you won both 1-0, I think.
Yeah, he played another one as well. I'm trying to think which was he played another one, and I think we actually conceded for the first time. So we were trying to think who it was against now. So he played against, it might have been Sheffield United. He started Sheffield United. So you're right, he played Arsenal, Leeds. And actually, up until that point, we hadn't conceded in matches that he'd started. He's very good at intercepting the ball and winning it back. And then, Sheffield United. I don't think we conceded loads to Sheffield United chance-wise, but it's obviously a disappointing performance. But I think
we didn't want that type of player against Sheffield United, and I think he stayed in because he did really well at Leeds.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think the drop-off for both McGinn and for Luiz, I think a lot of it is to do with Grealish being out, because the amount of interchange, they're so used to playing with him, and a lot of the passes and a lot of the attacking play goes through him. And McGinn, when he was in the Championship for Villa, he was a lot more further forward, and wasn't playing as an out and out number 6. So it would have been interesting to see if they could have done changed. I mean, I'd have personally liked us to have tweaked it where we maybe played Luiz and Nakamba, or somebody else sitting alongside Luiz, and let McGinn do a little bit more going forward. He seems to be playing, for me, particularly McGinn, with playing a little bit with the handbrake on, because there was a spell in this season, probably around Christmas time up and around there, where he was absolutely unplayable. I remember watching, I think, the Chelsea game, the United game. He was absolutely, McGinn was brilliant, and Luiz has typically been fairly steady, but I think recently, it's probably fair to say that across the team, since we came back from the COVID outbreak at the club, we just haven't quite been the same. And, I think part of that is going to be, I think the first 3 or 4 games would have been, fitness related, and would have lost the sharpness. I think that's fair to say. But then we don't know which players were impacted. We don't know if any of them have suffered a little bit fitness wise. So, so for me, and I think that's been an impact. But I think when you take Grealish out of the team, if you look at his heat map and touch map, he's just all over the pitch, and he's that option from the, where the 6s or the 8 pick up the ball. He's usually the first option to play a pass to, because he just gets that involved, and he'll go from left, and he started moving over to the right. So I think it's hard, because I think what we've seen is just how good and how important Grealish is without him actually playing. Because for me, I think Kane's been outstanding this season, but I think if I probably look outside of Kane, I think in the matches Grealish has been involved with, he's probably the best player in the league this year. He's been that good. And, some of the displays, he very rarely had an off day. He very, very rarely does. And
he made you single-handedly very good to watch, Adam.
Yeah, he did. But I think he did that for England as well, because what he does, he's a player that always wants the ball. You spot on. He's how I describe him. You can just tell he's the sort of person who was maybe a bit like Rooney in the playground. Just always wants the ball. He'll drift in and out of position, and he's just so good as well at making the right decision. So he's got that. He's got that ability very few players have got. I think they mentioned it about Ndombele yesterday, about that ability to
suck people in and go.
Yeah, and just exactly almost invite people in, and then move past them, change direction, etc. But he's just absolutely, I think it's a shame, because watching, it's not just a loss to Villa. I think it's been a loss to the league over this last 5 or 6 game weeks when the football has got really boring. It's no coincidence that Grealish hasn't been involved.
Do you think he'll be a loss to you in the summer, i.e. to another club?
I think it depends on how
much money Man City have got,
or how much anybody wants him as well. Because I think it's gonna. I mean, he'll cost probably in the region of 100 million. I don't see. It's a lot of money, but he's under contract long enough, and I don't think we want to sell him.
I don't think it's an unfair price, Adam. You don't have to flinch it. I think it's fair.
And obviously it depends what happens at the Euros. He has an outstanding Euros. You can probably add a little bit, a few extra.
That's very true.
It just depends how much. And also with Man City, I'm not sure they need him. I just don't. I think they've got. If you look at that area of the pitch,
there's a lot of players Man City don't need, mate. But
they've got. Yeah, so just for me, it depends how much they want him. I think he'd improve any of the teams in the league in terms of starting 11s. He's that good, and you can see what his absence has done to our team. But I think for me, I like Kane, so I would say outside of Harry Kane, he's the best English player. I think Foden's great as well, but outside of Kane for me, because I think Kane's done it year in, year out under loads of different circumstances. It's probably only the second season that Grealish has done it at the top level.
If Southgate had a really, really bad tournament in the summer and got sacked, what English manager would you put at the top to potentially be looking at taking over the job? And I mention that because I think Dara's man's put himself in the frame this year to say, look, I'm quite a good coach, actually. But I think if you looked at the book, if the bookies had a market now, I think you find Dean Smith's actually at the top of it.
I'd probably go Graham Potter. I think I think in terms of how he plays and what he's done, I've been really, really impressed with him.
Imagine England's XG, Jesus.
Well, yeah, but I think I think what Potter, yeah, exactly. I think what Potter's showed, he hasn't got. I think he's done it. He's created a really good style at Brighton, and so I like him from a coaching perspective. I think Dean Smith will be at Villa for a long time. I don't see him going to be England manager. Where Dean Smith is really good is I think from a coaching and football point of view, I think there are better coaches. I mentioned Potter. I think there are other people that would be ahead of him, but I think where Dean Smith is exceptional is man management. I've read a few articles about people that played for him. I've listened to that. I'd recommend this, and I'd have to dig it out. But he did a speech on culture, and it's just incredible. It's like a proper business leader speech, and where he's really good is hearts and minds. So every player wants to play for Dean Smith. You don't hear anybody have a bad word. Even Micah Richards, who didn't play for him, but they speak quite positively about him because he's. So I think he would create the right environment for England. And I think Grealish, you can see how much he loves playing for Smith, and they've got a really, really good relationship. So I think that's where he excels. But I think in terms of elite level coaching and tactics, I think there are people that are a little bit better than him.
About your man, Dara, he's impressed, really, isn't he? Because I think a lot of us probably thought the way he started, and we know that the team's had a massive overhaul. I think a lot of us thought he'd probably be out by the autumn, actually. But he's done wonders, really, hasn't he?
He's definitely impressed. Even last season, towards the end, when we were in the playoffs, I was thinking, like, if we get up, like, is he the man to take us? Like, I think there was still that kind of doubt because he's quite new to the management and he's still learning on the job. But what he's done in this short space of time with, like, how many players, 12, 13 new players that we've brought in this season to just get them clicking. Obviously not up front yet, but he's probably up there in the top 3 or 4 players, managers of the season, I reckon.
I wouldn't argue that. I'll tell you what.
If we stay up anyway, he'll definitely be in the running.
I'd prefer him at my place to the manager I've got. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah. As for England, I think it's too soon for England for him anyway. But
no, great. Could you see though, if the worst did happen and you went down, could you see clubs like maybe Palace might be looking for a new manager in the summer or something, saying, yeah, I'd like a bit of that?
yeah, definitely. We probably there definitely was a bit of a split in the fan base at the start of the season. I think we didn't really realize what we had, but he's building something, and he was doing that with players last season. He was developing players, and you could see a big improvement in them. I mentioned at the start, at one of the podcasts we did at the start, like Josh Onama, who had come on like leaps and bounds, and we've got the basis of a team. I think we just need to do what Villa did last year and just stay up by hook or by crook, and then the next season you can push on, because that game week 3 when we'd played you, Adam, and at the start of the season, we kind of were going into the season thinking these guys are going to be in and around us, and these are the teams that we want to beat. But it hasn't panned out that way.
I still feel really bad about that game, because I said afterwards that Dennis Odoye had finished his Premier League career that game, and he hasn't played a minute since.
Has he not? Yeah.
The overhaul, you've obviously got a lot of guys in there on loan, and I think probably, touch wood, if you stay up, there's going to need to be an overhaul of that squad again in the summer, because you're not going to be able to buy all these players. It's really clear and obvious. But I think what you've got in there certainly gives you a real shot. I think the majority of people, Dara, probably want you to stay up more than Newcastle. It's not a particular slight on them. Just think most people quite enjoy watching you. I think they're giving it a real good go and stuff. And I think the fact that you were to think back to that performance against Villa in game week 3. I mean, when people like Jamie Carragher said after the game they're already relegated, I don't think any of us actually thought at the time he's wrong. You would have gone this so bad.
Yeah, that was the low point of the season for me, was that Villa game, because again we thought that Villa were going to be like bottom half of the table, like 15th or below, and this is a team that we should be beating or competing with at least, and we didn't even. Like Grealish was unbelievable on the day. Was it Curran scored a goal? Was it?
Yeah, Curran, yeah. And
I mean that's how bad we were. Conor Curran was scoring against us. Like, so
he's doing quite well at Swansea. I love mate.
Yeah. Let's say. I mean, early in the season, I think we'd identified Newcastle. I was looking at them going, how have they got to this number of points? Because they've fluked. Like, wasn't it a last minute penalty against Spurs? There was like, oh man, I don't know what. I don't know. They were pulling points out of their arse. I don't know where they were getting points.
They have the habit of that, though. If you look at any stats, they're usually right at the bottom, but they just somehow manage to get points, which is annoying.
If you had Callum Wilson up front, Dara, do you think you'd be in the same position you're in?
No, absolutely not. Or Watkins, either or.
To be honest with you, that's part why I think Newcastle still got a strong chance as well. Whatever we think about comparing the teams at the moment, when it comes to it, and Newcastle need a goal scorer, once they get him back fit, they've got one.
Yeah, but just look at the teams that they've got. So they've got Spurs after the international break.
Yeah, that's 3 points. We'll roll over from, mate. Sorry to give you the bad news now.
So they've got Burnley, which is they could potentially get something out of that. Then they've got West Ham.
Yeah, they peaked too soon, West Ham, mate. That's Liverpool. 9 points already there for Newcastle.
They've got that spell, haven't they? They've got, like you said, they've got West Ham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Leicester, Man City. Those 5 games.
And then you're looking at the last 2 games, which they'll be targeting. But we could be clear of them by that stage. We're only 2. We could be ahead of them if we beat you guys.
On the fixtures, genuinely, if the fixtures go to what we expect and what we've seen from the teams, honestly, by the time game week 38 comes around, it shouldn't matter. You should have them done.
I hope that we're 4 points clear or more going into the last game.
You've got to put the ball in the net, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's do thanks, guys. Let's do predictions before we go. I realise it's the game's been moved to a Sunday now, 4:30 p.m. actually.
Yes,
so we're actually recording this on. Yeah, you fluked that one, Adam. By the way,
I know.
We're actually pre-recording this Monday night, so 13 days away. But let's do predictions. I'm going to ask you for 2 predictions here. One on the assumption that Grealish plays.
Oh, Adam, right, okay. Yeah.
Correct score prediction if Grealish plays.
I think if he plays, I think Villa will win 2-0.
And if he doesn't?
If he doesn't, I think Fulham will win 1-0. I think it's that important. It's that important to us.
Dara?
I think probably Villa will win if Grealish plays, but I'd really fancy us to win if he doesn't.
I agree with that.
So I actually have the stats on here. So Dean Smith's win rate with Jack Grealish is 45%. Without Jack Grealish, 18%.
I know, yeah. Even worse than I think if you look at it without him, we're just not creating anything. I think with your defence, it's set up probably for offensive to get at least a draw and potentially come and sneak a goal and on the counter.
I'm looking for a 1 week punt myself in game week 30. And I'm just wondering that 2 goals in 6 games, and they've not been the worst fixtures for you, Adam. Yeah. If Grealish is not back, I'm wondering if that 1 week punt is worth going Ollie Watkins to a Timo Werner or something for the 1 game week. That's something I need to think about over the next week or so. Because I think if you had to pin me now, I'd probably say I'd go 1-0 Fulham.
Yeah, I would. It all comes down to if Grealish is fit and playing, it's a different game.
Of course it is.
And, if he's not, I'd agree with you. I think we'll lose one. I think that's a and plus as well, Fulham need to win the game, and I always think motivation adds a little bit extra.
Your season's finished, which is not a bad thing, by the way, Adam. But
after last season,
yeah.
I mean, I can't take going into the last game of the season, and I hope you don't, Dara, because it's horrible.
No,
I was an emotional wreck against West Ham. It was a hard game to watch.
Yeah, we had playoffs last year, so I know it all too well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Cool.
I think that probably comes into account as well. Like that, we really need to win. We've made some bad errors against City and against Leeds. They've slipped in, and it kind of looks a little bit like the earlier part of the season. We've got that international break to kind of rectify that and regroup and get the positive energy back. And obviously Newcastle losing to Brighton is another little boost in our direction.
Really interesting. Go on, Dara, finish.
It's like if you said to me, would you take a draw? No, I probably wouldn't take a draw because the draw is not really any good to us.
It's a winnable game now.
We need to win. That's simply it.
Yeah, I agree with that. You need to target that as well.
Dara, you came on in the international break in October as well with Tomo FPL Blade before you played at Sheffield United in game week 5, and we ended that podcast and Tomo predicted you to win 1-0, and you and I fell about laughing because we couldn't believe he'd done that. We've all basically just agreed now that we think Fulham can win at Villa, and none of us are laughing about it this time. And I think that tells you how far the strides have been from the start of the season to now.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Guys, really enjoyed that. Thanks very much. Adam, before we let you go, do you want to plug your other content, mate?
Oh, yeah. So...
no, you can't. You think way too happy. Go on.
So we along with Fantasy Football Hub, we do Green Arrow podcast, which is usually every Wednesday, but I think due to the fixtures, it just seems to be a random day that we're doing it. But yeah, that's we do it live on YouTube as well.
Good man. Give my regards to Fergie. Top Tottenham man, that fella. And Dara, do you want to plug the stuff you do on the outside as well?
I haven't done too much lately, not fancy wise anyway. I was doing a little bit for the Fantasy Faithful at the start of the year. And every now and again I'll be on the Fulhamish podcast talking all things Fulham.
Good man. How often does that go out? Is that weekly Fulhamish?
There will be there's one weekly pod, and then there's like match reaction and some other little videos on YouTube and bits and pieces here and there. Lots of articles.
Oh, brilliant.
Bit of everything.
Enjoy the international break, guys. Good luck in game week 30. I particularly, Dara, want to wish you particular good luck for the rest of this season.
Thank you.
I'm definitely going to speak to you again before the end of the season, whenever we get that Everton double locked in for you and Sean, and we'll talk about all the Villa players we're not going to buy for the double game week. But we look forward to that. Dara, listen, if that goes to final day, you are definitely coming on with Si, mate, for game week 30.
I
no doubt about it, mate.
Yeah, I watched your episode with FPL Seagull, and I saw you mention that, so I thought, I hope it doesn't come to that, to be honest.
I don't think Simon Bibby, FPL footballer, does either, to be honest.
No.
Guys, thanks so much for giving up your time. You can follow Adam at Hopcroft13 on Twitter. You can follow Dara at the Tinkermen on Twitter. Another C.O.T.C still to come This week, we're going to the other end of the table. Thursday night, Leicester. I say Thursday night, be Thursday afternoon. Leicester against Manchester City with Aaron Lagot and FPL Pringle. We still have Southampton, Burnley with FPL Gaffer, Turfy Topper, Arsenal, Liverpool with 3-5 Who and FPL Local Lord to come next week as well. Sky Fantasy Football to come from us tomorrow. Thanks again to Adam and Dara. Cue music, please, man, show.